Okay, excuse the mess. Someone asked about how I fixed all my various problems. When I first bought my Langmuir, I had a lot of issues with failed arc starts, the torch just randomly climbing in the middle of cuts, and then it would just ruin everything for that cut, and just all sorts of issues with it. So I did so much, I think you could pretty much eliminate everything except for one thing that I didn't do. So I'll start with the plasma cutter. So the ground wire, or your work lead, whatever you want to call it, you don't want it crossing over any other wires related to your CNC machine. So as much as you can keep that away from all these goodies here, the better. You want a good distance between the machine. I probably got about 4 or 5. I got 5 feet between my machine and my plasma cutter. You don't want them right next to each other. What we get is a electric noise, and that can interfere with your operations. It's pretty big. And so this work lead, not only that, you don't want lines crossing each other. As much as you can eliminate lines crossing over each other, back and forth. You don't want any of this rolled up. If these things, when this came with the machine, it had like 25 feet. I mean, my cutter from the table's like 5 feet, like we said. So max I need probably like 8 feet or something. But Jim Colt, he's a industry leader. He said shorten up your work lead only to how long you need it, and make sure you get it a straight path from it to the ground without it touching a bunch of other wires and wrapping a bunch of coils around it and stuff. So I did that. I switched the ground to the magnetic ground clamp, so this thing's pretty heavy duty, works really good. That's not anything to help with the problems, just really handy to have. So obviously you want dry air. So one thing I do, I have this braided hose down here, and every time before I use a machine, I open the sucker up. You can see the ground's wet. I just did that a little bit ago. I have a Tsunami water filter. This thing works great, but it's not enough strictly on its own to filter the water level down to what's acceptable for your plasma cutter. It will still work with just that, but your consumables won't last very long. So after going through my oil coalescing and water filtration, it goes down to a motor guard. And that motor guard doesn't need to be changed often because most everything gets filtered here, but that does filter it down to enough to the point where you will get max life out of your consumables. So that covers that with the work lead and dry air, right? No cables crossing. So I got one of these. This is a USB isolator. When you get electric noise, these can help a lot with that in general. They're like 30 bucks on Amazon. Maybe I'll post a link later where you can find that. And it's just plug in, nothing special besides that. My laptop I carry in and out, but if you're using a laptop, you don't want to have it plugged into the power source while you're cutting. Just don't do it. Make sure it's fully charged before you operate, and it should last your entire table. I mean, unless you got a really bad battery. There is a way to run it with the cable, but you need an adapter to get rid of your ground cable, I think it is, and because that will create a lot of electric noise too. So what else did I do here? Yeah, and that's, I think, and then the last thing I didn't do is get an independent ground for this. After I got this USB thing and I got my water really taken care of, really dry air, and I shortened that lead and got that isolator, all that good stuff, I stopped having problems. But I was ready to do the last thing that I could possibly do to help with all the errors I was having, which was put a ground outside, independent ground just for this machine, big broad, put it way down to the earth and give this table its own independent grind table. But I didn't need to do that, because after I did all that, I stopped having problems. Always make sure that there's plenty of slack here. Some of your failures can be when these get too tense and it tries to go down, and it does and it senses some resistance. That takes measurements with all that stuff, so it's going to impact how it cuts. So always make sure you got good slack on it all throughout the table. And yeah, and that's it. Obviously you can tell I don't clean much often. I do mine about every 3 or 4 months. I clean it out and put some borax in there, and that's about it. Yep.